Welcome to the B. Lenore Show. Here, we will discuss lifestyle, beauty, celebrity gossip, and current events in our own way, my way, B-style. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Hi, everybody. How are you guys doing today? Uh-oh. Is my mouse working? Oh, okay. How are you guys doing today? I hope you guys are doing well. Happy Monday. I've got more energy this Monday than I think I've had in a long time. It's been a rough couple of weeks, but I'm feeling much better today, and I'm so happy to have all of you here. With that said, let me say hi. Hi, Sagittarius Queen. Hey, Jill's Comfort Zone. Hey, Sugar Daddy One Williams. Sugar Daddy One Williams. I like it. I like it. Hey, Shell Loves. How are you, boo? Let's see. Sarkonos is here. Hi, Sarkonos. Hey, Know Your Own Worth, my beautiful mom. Thank you for being here to hold us down today, okay? Thank you so much. Hey, December, baby. How are you? Kareem the Trucker is here. Yes. Miss Cruiser is here. Hey, M-Town Boy for you. I thought you put me down. I ain't seen you in so long. I thought you was mad at me about Monique, child. Hey, Grace K. How are you? Thank you for coming back. Hey, Tweety. Hey, CCN TV. Hey, Penny. Hey, Penny. Hey, Cherise. Butterfly. Hi, Bluty. All right, y'all. Well, we're in the house tonight, okay? So with that said, I'm going to bring up a friend, hometown friend. We actually even share loved ones. I'll put it that way. We share some loved ones. And he happened to write a book. Well, actually, did this start as a book? We'll find out. No, but he did a documentary. It started as an article because he was a news reporter for a local paper here. He was doing an article around these women wrestlers, and he'll tell you that story. Okay, I don't want to mess up the story, but about these Black female wrestlers that originated right here in our hometown of Columbus, Ohio. So he's going to talk about that and how these women sort of changed in industry. They were pioneers in this field. And a lot of people don't even know that Black women in particular really had a place in athletics where wrestling was concerned. So we're going to talk about that. And we'll also talk about a book that he wrote called it's about the comedy club in Chicago, All Jokes Aside. And I think it's called All Jokes Aside. We'll talk about that as well. All right. So with that said, hey, Mama Cynthia Simpson, welcome. Hey, Cool Gamer. So with that said, I'm without further ado, I'm just gonna bring him out here so we can chat. All right, because you know I love comedy, and you're gonna learn that as a little girl, I was a big wrestling fan. Okay, so we got a lot to talk about. So without further ado, let me bring out the one, the only Mr. Chris Bournea. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Valerie. Thanks for having me on. Congratulations on your show.
Thank you. Thank you. Congratulations on your movie and everything else that's going on.
Thank you so much.
Around that. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. You guys, you're going to see one of the ladies that is featured in Chris's film, Lady Wrestler, is actually featured tomorrow night on A&E. So we'll talk about that too. So if you want to check that out tomorrow, we definitely encourage you to do so. But let's talk, Chris. Where are you from?
Yeah, so I was born and raised here in Columbus, Ohio. Grew up mostly on the east side. So yeah, went to Eastmore, also went to Fort Hays, studied video production at Fort Hays, and then I went on to Columbus State and Ohio State. So Ohio, born and bred Buckeye my whole life.
You did it all right here.
Oh yeah.
And then built a whole career right here.
Oh yeah.
All right. So,
Yeah.
okay. So you said what did you study in high school at Fort Hayes?
So for those who may not be familiar with the Career Center system, so the Columbus Public Schools have career centers where you can go and take, study something that you are considering going into as a career. So in my junior and senior year of high school, I spent half the day at my home school at Eastmoor and then half the day downtown at Fort Hayes. And when I tell you Fort Hayes was literally like the school in fame, because you have all kinds of arts there. It's a performing arts high school and a career center. So you could study anything from like automotive repair to dance and music. Yes. So
I thought it was all arts and that was it there. Okay,
well,
I didn't realize that.
For the high school part of it, it is arts. But for the career center part of it, it's different. Even I think they may have even had at one point legal assisting. So you have all these different like trades alongside the arts. So literally like walking to class, the TV production room, you'd see people in the hall, doing pirouettes and, doing their scales. Me. It was literally just like the movie Fame. Wow. And I made a lot of good friends there. I actually met a friend of mine who ended up doing the editing on Lady Wrestler, my friend Paul Hill, who is now, he's been for years, the Wexner Center for the Arts at the Ohio State University. He's their full-time film editor. Yeah, it was an excellent education, an excellent experience.
Wow. Okay. So after you get out of high school, you go to college. Did you study journalism in college?
No, because I always wanted to be a novelist and a film. I always saw myself as someone sort of like, this is kind of an older reference, but Gordon Parks, the African-American photographer who became a movie director, or along the lines of Quincy Jones or Debbie Allen, somebody who was like, maybe they had one main talent, but then they branched off into other fields. So I always wanted to be a writer and a filmmaker and like a playwright. So I actually studied English in college because I thought English is like a good base for everything, because I would get, I would study creative writing and I would study story structure. And I figured I could sort of learn filmmaking sort of like on the job. And I also had the background in video production from Fort Hayes. So I just kind of thought filmmaking was something that I could just kind of learn as I went.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what was one of your first jobs then out of college?
Yeah, so I was in the unique position of being able to work my way through college. I already had a professional job. Like how some people that are trying to go into journalism or going to become a writer, they get an internship, or they're working a regular part-time job like at a fast food restaurant to put themselves through college. So I actually ended up getting this internship with the Collin Post, the local African-American newspaper, right out of high school. And what happened was I worked there for several months as a freelance writer. And then actually the editor, Raymond Smith, who had actually brought me on as an intern, he ended up leaving and going to the Warren Tribune Chronicle, and he's actually still there. Really? And the general manager, Amos Lynch, who's known as the godfather of the Black press in Columbus, he was a legend in the Black press. He said, well, since you know the computer system, we know your work and your work ethic, would you like to come on as a full-time reporter? I'm like, of course, So I wasn't one of those kids that like was on the high school newspaper or worked on the yearbook staff. I had no aspirations to journalism whatsoever. I always wanted to do creative writing, but I was like, this is an opportunity I can't turn down. So I became the entertainment editor for the Collin Post. So here I am, 19, 20 years old, interviewing people. Like my first interview was Gladys Knight.
Shut up.
Yes. Because she ended up marrying Les Brown, who, the motivational speaker who's from Columbus. Yes. So one of my first assignments was I go to the home of Les Wright, who was a city council woman at the time. She was friends with Les Brown. Here I am with like at a backyard cookout with Gladys Knight, Les Brown, and all these, city council people from Columbus. So here I am, 19, 20 years old, green as to be. But, got to do Shaka Khan. That was another interview of mine.
What?
One of my first interviews. One of my early interviews, Stedman Graham, Oprah's, significant other. He had a motivational business book. He came to Ohio State to speak. I got to interview him. So I got to meet tons of, really important movers and shakers that I would never have gotten to meet as just a college student.
That's amazing. First of all, people go to college to get jobs like that.
Right.
Journalists go to college, study journalism just to have the entertainment editor job at any newspaper, let alone, a Black person who probably grew up reading the Collin Post.
Yes.
I can only imagine what that felt like for you.
Yeah, it was amazing because, pretty much of, any Black home, we had the Collin Post, we had Jet, we had Ebony. But, I never thought, okay, one day my byline is going to appear there. So it was really, really an amazing experience. And another thing that the Collin Post really doors it open for me was that I grew up middle class, but I wasn't like, quote unquote bougie. My parents and grandparents were like working class. My grandfather was a maintenance supervisor. My grandmother worked at the phone company. My mom was like a stay-at-home mom, and my stepfather was an engineer, but he was kind of unemployed on and off. So we weren't rich by any means. So I got to meet, judges like Judge Robert Duncan, the first African-American state Supreme Court judge. I got to meet, who was at the time a city council member, Michael Coleman, who became the first Black mayor of Columbus. I got introduced to this world of Black society. I covered the cotillions, where the Black society debut, big ball that they throw. I got introduced to a world of Black society, meeting doctors and lawyers, African-American professionals, this whole world. I sort of knew it existed, but I wasn't in it because my family wasn't upper class like that. So getting exposed to seeing like powerful Black people, that was really empowering as a young person.
I talk about that a lot on this channel, and I call myself a lightweight guru at networking. So I know a lot of people, but honestly, I think the idea of networking without it being called that was really instilled in me by my parents, because both of my parents were middle class working folks, and we weren't bougie by any means, but I had the best of everything. I mean, not necessarily because they had the money to buy it, but they knew where to place me so that I had access, to the resources that were available. And she, my mom put me in everything, and I had a chance working on campaigns as a middle schooler, meeting some of those same people like what you just mentioned. That was so inspiring.
I was able to go to private school.
Me too. Yeah. Uh-oh, you froze, Chris? Or am I frozen? Uh-oh. Who frozen, y'all? Me or Chris? Might be. Oh my. Is the whole show frozen? Y'all.
Hey, Valerie, sorry I froze up there.
Oh, it was you. Okay. I didn't know sometimes it's me.
No, I think it's my connection is a little unstable, so I'm sorry if I freeze up here and there, but
no worries. Hold on one second. I'm gonna bring up a window of us live just so I can keep my eye on the.
Okay.
All right. I'm sorry. Okay.
No problem.
But you know what? Something else that you said, it reminded me. I'm sure it'll come back to me, so I apologize. Let me. Can we pull up a picture of you as a young person?
Yes.
Okay. Where'd it go? So this picture right here. And I don't know. I think I'm gonna be in the way. There we go.
Yes.
Aww.
So this is me as I think a first grader at Holy Spirit Catholic School with my younger brother Doug. And so sort of the interesting thing about my family is I grew up in an interracial family. So both my parents are African American, but I have 3 white step parents and I have 4 biracial siblings. So that was kind of something different about my family. And I didn't, honestly, I didn't know we were different. I'm fortunate that we didn't experience a lot of like discrimination, or nobody like ostracized us because we were a mixed family. I didn't really think anything differently of our family until I got a little bit older. And actually, my younger sister, Elizabeth, I got her a part-time job as an editorial assistant at the Collin Post. And every now and then somebody would say, oh, you two look kind of different. Or, you know, they would make, because she's lighter skinned, obviously, because her father is white. But, you know, I had a very, very average, normal upbringing. I didn't luckily experience a lot of trauma or a lot of feeling different because my family was interracial.
I'm going to need you to go back a second, though. Those numbers were odd to me. So you said, I have 2 Black parents, but 3 white step-parents. So does that mean that both parents married Caucasian people and then somebody married someone else twice or something?
Right. So what happened is, so my parents were never married, you know, because they had me when they were both really young. And so my mom ended up marrying my stepfather, Doug, when I was like in kindergarten. And then my father, my biological father, who I didn't meet until I was like in high school, he had my younger sister, Alexa, with my stepmom, Anita, and they were never married. Then later in life, my father married my stepmom, Chris. So both my stepmothers, Anita and Chris, are white, and my stepfather is white.
Okay.
So, you know, I had a very interesting, so my stepfather's side of the family, they're from Mount Gilead, a small rural town in northern Ohio. So we would go up there for holidays, and it would be like me and my mom and my siblings would be the only people of color. But I didn't think anything about it. They would be playing country music. Nobody ever mentioned race. I take that back. One time, my step cousin Adam was like, do you have a zipper in the back where your color comes off? And I was like, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. What? Does your color come off? Because the only thing he had ever seen was white. And I'm like, I don't even think he was being racist. He was like maybe 7 or 8 at the time.
Well, he was just being silly.
Yeah, just something that, you know, a child who doesn't know any better would say. But, you know, nobody ever called us the N-word. It was just a very average, normal upbringing.
Wow. Okay. Now I'm going to show this one too.
Yeah, so that's my first official year as a full-time reporter at the Collin Post back in '93. See, I was very green. I was like 20 years old. Still have my box, my I'll Be Sure little box hairstyle. Yeah, so that was back before the internet, where we had to modem everything to the head office in Cleveland. We were using, we didn't even have Microsoft Word back there. We were using this word processing program called Multi. Yeah, so the computers would crash a lot. And we actually had to send the photos and stuff. We had to send them by Greyhound to Cleveland for the staff up there to lay out the paper. And sometimes the Greyhound package would get lost, and we would have to redo the entire paper on deadline day.
What?
Yeah, and send an emergency package back up to Cleveland. So young people today that have email and, you know, instant everything, be glad, because back in the days when we were using stone tablets and modeming everything, you know, that was the early technology.
The whole time you're talking, I was like, what? When you said you would have to maybe have to redo the whole paper,
yes,
because something was lost.
Because photos, you know, these you couldn't just scan something and send the staff in Cleveland the JPEG. You had to send them the physical photo. So we had to redo we actually did the cut and paste, and we had to use a little this red pencil where you would indicate where stories and photos went on actual like sheets of paper that were like, you know, approximate the size of the newspaper. So we would have to go in. Luckily, we would send the paper up in stages. Like we would send one package on Saturday, one Monday night. So luckily, like they would get the Saturday package, but maybe the Monday package would get lost. So we would only have to redo the pages that we sent on Monday. But I mean, when I tell you we were like working from like 9 in the morning to like 1, 2, 3 in the morning, I mean, that was really a trial by fire, learning journalism, because I did everything. You know, you took your own pictures, you interviewed people, you did layout, you typed up news releases. I mean, you know, in addition to entertainment, I did everything else. Crime, I'd have to go knock on people's doors when there was a murder and ask the family, you know, and I used to hate doing that because I know people were going through grief and like, how do you feel? How do you think I feel? I'm devastated.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Oh, wow. So how long were you there at the Collin Post?
So I was there
at 18.
So I was there from 93 to 95. And then there was this big split where Amos Lynch broke off and formed the Columbus Post, and all the Columbus staff followed him to the Columbus Post. So I was at the Columbus Post from 95 to 2000. And then after I graduated from graduated from Ohio State in 98, I stayed at the Collin Post a couple more years, and then ended up going to different newspapers like the Daily Reporter. And then I eventually ended up at This Week, which is a subsidiary of the daily paper, the Columbus Dispatch.
Okay. So tell me, when did you decide that you were going to write your first book? Was that the only book? You didn't write a book about Lady Wrestler. It was the article
the article, right.
But the book was
well, like I said, I always wanted to be an author. So actually, the first book I wrote was a novel called Chloe, about a Black French Creole girl who grows up in Paris, whose mother is from New Orleans, and she wants to be an actress, but her mother's really overprotective. So she leaves Paris for New York and has all these adventures in the entertainment industry. I'm actually in the process of turning that into a ebook fiction series. So that's yet another one of my 10,000 jobs I have as a fiction author. But how I ended up becoming the co-author of All Jokes Aside was through another famous Columbus person, Will Haygood, who is a Washington Post journalist. He started out at the Collin Post, and he would come back to Columbus, every now and then to visit Amos Lynch, who was like his, had given him his first start in journalism. So I made friends with Will. And so Will, this was back in the early 2010s, he referred me to Raymond, because Raymond Smith, who was Raymond Lambert. I'm getting the two Raymonds in my life confused. Raymond Lambert was the founder of All Jokes Aside with his business partner, James Alexander. They were Morehouse College buddies who decided to quit their jobs on Wall Street and found this comedy club because they both like comedy. So Raymond, Will Haygood, who wrote the article that the movie The Butler was based on with Oprah and Forrest Whitaker, referred Raymond to me, and Raymond was like, I'm looking for someone to help me write my autobiography. Would you be interested? And actually, at the time, I actually already started working on Lady Wrestler as a documentary. And I at first told Raymond no. I was like, this is a great story, but I'm working on this documentary. And then come to find out, he's also a documentary filmmaker. He had already made a documentary about All Jokes Aside and was just looking to turn it into a book. So when I found that out, I was like, well, I can't turn down this opportunity to network, as you said, network with another filmmaker who's already, his documentary debuted on Showtime and had been at a lot of prestigious film festivals. Like, I think it was at Toronto and a couple of Sundance and a couple of really big film festivals. So for a couple years in the teens, the 2010s, Raymond and I worked, he's in Chicago. So we would talk over the phone and email each other. And then maybe once a month, I'd drive out to Chicago and we would sort of go over the chapters. And it was really a team effort. And All Jokes Aside was the launching pad for a lot of anybody Black who was a famous comedian in the 90s, Bernie Mac, Steve Harvey, Monique, D.L. Hughley, Dave Chappelle, who of course is from Ohio, Chris Rock. They all got their start at All Jokes Aside.
It's funny because Chicago, All Jokes Aside, was to Chicago like a lot of Uptown was to Atlanta. During that time period, Black comedians, if they were really trying to make it, and even the hottest ones and the ones that were upcoming would all be in the same club, and they might be in either one of these clubs at any moment. That's the great thing about going.
Yeah. They called All Jokes Aside the Motown of comedy clubs. Like how Motown was like a star factory. All Jokes Aside was like a star factory.
Yeah. Nice.
It was even trailblazing in the sense that Flame, the first well-known Black transgender comedian, got her start. Flame Monroe, got her started. All Jokes Aside.
Okay. Let me ask you: did you get to interview any comedians when you were writing the book?
I did. I actually interviewed Flame. Flame is a mess, as you can imagine.
Yeah, he is.
Because I asked her about did any of the comedians sort of ostracize her, and she said, well, I would just have to be like, I'm more man than you'll ever be and more woman than you'll ever have. And so she was really feisty and knew how to stand up for herself. And I interviewed Mike Bonner. You know, is not as well known as some of the other comedians, but he talked about, all jokes aside, it actually opened up another club in Detroit, and he was like the MC. So I got to interview him. But the great thing was that Raymond had all these transcripts from all the famous comedians that he had interviewed for the documentary. So I got to read all of their transcripts, and they talked about how, like Steve Harvey talked about being a young, struggling comedian who actually crashed on Raymond's couch when he came to perform at the club. You know, and Steve's from Cleveland. He's from Ohio.
Yes, he sure is. There are a lot of comedians from Ohio. I mean, there's Dave, there's Steve, there's Kim
Whitley.
Kim Whitley. There is what's the guy from it's terrible. The one Bob Barker, Price is Right host.
Oh yeah, Drew Carey. Yep.
Drew Carey is from Cleveland. DL's from Ohio.
Yes. David Arnold. He's another pretty well-known.
David Arnold's from Cleveland.
Cleveland.
That's right, he is.
Yeah, he and Kim Whitley, grew up knowing each other. Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
All about that. Okay. So, hey, Shirley Hogsett, I see you. So my Chicagoan friend is in the chat. She said, let me read her thing. I went to All Jokes Aside all the time. I saw so many comedians perform there before they made it big. Yep. That's how I was when I was in Atlanta, that same time period, same thing. You go in there, you could see anybody, like the biggest of the biggest to someone who's literally just starting. But that person just starting may be the next big star. You know?
Absolutely. That was the thing with Dave Chappelle. Raymond said Dave Chappelle bombed at All Jokes Aside because he was used to performing in front of white people, you know, and white audiences are more polite. They'll applaud just A for effort. But you know, black people are like, I'm paying my 2-drink minimum. I got all dressed up, and you better bring your A game. So he actually Raymond had to turn the light on him and pull him off stage early because it was like crickets. Nobody was laughing.
Oh, and now he's the genius of all geniuses out here in the streets.
The GOAT, yeah.
I love him. And yes, Cat Williams is from Ohio. He's from Cincinnati, right?
I thought he was from Dayton, but I know he's from Ohio. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, so let's get to Lady Wrestler.
Yes.
How did we get here again? So start where this all began.
Yeah. So there's a friend of mine who works in public relations named Terry Anderson, an African-American man who is childhood friends with Shelly Adams, the daughter of Ethel Johnson, who was the first African-American female wrestling champion in the 1950s. Ethel and her older sister, Babs Wingo, was actually the first Black woman to integrate pro wrestling in 1952. Then Babs brought Ethel on, and they brought their younger sister, Marva, on. So Terry, when I would call Terry for story ideas, because he worked at the Greater Columbus Arts Council, by this time I was working at This Week News. This was back in 2005. Terry kept telling me, there's this really interesting lady that I grew up with that you should sit down and interview. When we were growing up, she always had like bodybuilders and wrestlers hanging out at her house. And I think she was some kind of wrestler herself. So you should sit down and interview her. So Terry set up this interview between me and, I call her Miss Ethel. She's since passed away. But so she had all these amazing stories of going all over the world, wrestling in Canada and Latin America. In Latin America, she had a stage name, Rita Valdez. Her and her sisters went to Japan. And what struck me the most was that when they would go overseas, they would be treated like queens, like how a lot of Black athletes and entertainers are looked at as like almost superhuman. But then when they would travel in the South, they would have to stay in segregated hotels or rooming houses. They would have to go in the back door of restaurants. Ethel talks in the documentary about how when a white person was coming towards you on the street, you had to step off out of deference, and they would call her girl. Here she is, a grown woman, and they're calling her, little kids are calling her girl or whatever. So they had to deal with all the indignities of Jim Crow. And these women were wrestling before Rosa Parks took her.
Yes.
Refused to sit down at the back, sit at the back of the bus. They were wrestling before Title IX. They were wrestling before the feminist movement. So they were true trailblazers back in the day. So I got to interview her, Ethel, and wrote the article for the Columbus Dispatch. The article happened to come out, and they held I interviewed her in December, but they held the article until March for Women's History Month. It came out the same weekend as Arnold Schwarzenegger's fitness classic that he holds in Columbus every year. Arnold Schwarzenegger's people saw the article, called me, and were like, we want to give Ethel Johnson a Lifetime Achievement Award at the closing ceremony. By this time, Ethel was retired. She was in her 70s. She was a grandmother. And although she was willing to speak with me, she was like, I really don't really want that kind of attention. Tell them I said things, but no things. And in my research for the article, I had come across this documentary called Lipstick and Dynamite about the white women who were like Ethel and her sister's peers, but it was just like a passing reference to the Black women. And I was like, if anybody deserves their own movie, it's these Black women who not only overcame sexism, they had to overcome racism as well. So I asked Miss Ethel, I said, well, would you be willing to be interviewed on camera so that we could turn your story into a documentary? And to my surprise, she said yes. And then through my research, I came to interview Ramona Isabel, another one of the early Black women trailblazers in wrestling. And it just sort of, the project grew and kind of snowballed the more research I did.
Mm-hmm. Now, and let me show this picture. This is the cover of the actual film itself, right?
That's a movie poster for the film, for the documentary. Movie. So it's like a 90-minute documentary.
And in this picture, you have Ethel. This is her in the air.
Yes,
right?
that's her in the air doing her famous drop kick, and that's her sister Babs.
That's her sister.
Yeah. But people didn't know they were sisters when they were wrestling. That's why they had different ring names.
Yes.
Yeah.
So these.
Yeah. So this is one of the vintage not playbills, but whatever you call it, wrestling posters from the time. They would use the word ebony and Negro and call them girls. And Valerie, I think you might know one of these women in this little poster.
Oh, you know what? One does look very familiar to me. Oh my gosh! As a matter of fact, let me see something here. Yeah, that lady.
Yes,
that's my mommy, y'all.
Yes. She was one of the trailblazers. Yes.
So that's my mommy. She was brought in, and this is terrible that I don't know which one. I want to say it was Babs that brought my mom into it.
Right.
Into wrestling. And well, I shouldn't say brought her into it. Well, I'll let you tell some of the story about Billy, and then I can tell them about how my mom got involved with Billy and the ladies. So
right. So how Black women ended up getting into wrestling in the first place was there was a promoter, a white man named Billy Wolf, who was a former wrestler from Missouri, who ended up relocating to Columbus because Columbus is centrally located in the center of the country. Columbus is literally within a day's drive of like 70% of the country. So this was in the 1930s when Billy was setting up his wrestling organization. So this was back before air travel was really common. So he knew the wrestlers would be traveling by car most of the time. So he chose a centrally located place like Columbus. Yeah. Billy groomed the first women's world wrestling champion, Mildred Burke, a woman he plucked out of obscurity. She was a waitress, a single mom, groomed her into a world champion, Mildred Burke. But Mildred Burke was a white woman. He knew that Mildred needed opponents, in order to be able to keep wrestling. And Billy, even though he had a lot of ways that people considered to.
Uh-oh. You froze, Chris. So you guys, and I know he'll be on in 2 seconds, but
be like underhanded where he would.
There you go.
I'm sorry. He was very progressive. Yeah. When it came to race, and he was inspired by how Jackie Robinson integrated Major League Baseball and brought a lot of excitement to the sport. So he was like, if I bring Black women into wrestling, people will come see the matches just out of curiosity, seeing Black women wrestling white women. And in fact, Babs Wingo was the first, she and Mildred Burke were the first interracial championship in 1953.
So you have these sisters. You mentioned 2, but there were actually 3 sisters total, right?
Yes. So the youngest sister, Marva. Yes.
Hold on. This one. Okay.
Yes. So Babs is the one. Her picture is over the number 4. Then the next woman is Ethel Johnson. Then the next woman is your mom, Lula Mae Provo, and then the last picture is Marva Scott, the youngest sister of Babs and Ethel, who got into the business, seeing her big sisters traveling around the world and coming back with mink coats. And she was like, hey, I want to get into this business. So the three sisters were, I always say they were Venus and Serena before Venus and Serena were a gleam in their parents' eye.
Absolutely. And it gives me chills because I'm so proud of those ladies. The fact that three sisters, now we're talking the 50s and early 60s, you know, and they were breaking barriers. They were independent. They were making good money.
Supporting their families a lot of times.
They were supporting their families, sending a lot of that money home because they spent a lot of time on the road.
Yes.
And having to fight, you know, Jim Crow laws in the midst of it all. That's the crazy part. And can I tell a quick story? You just touched on something about the fact that Billy knew that, okay, he wanted the central location, which brought him here so people could drive wherever they needed to go pretty easily. And there were often times, now my mom was from the South. Were those ladies from the South originally?
Their parents were. They were like part of the Great Migration. Their parents were from Georgia, and they migrated up to Columbus. So the sisters grew up in Columbus. I think they may have been born in Georgia, but their parents moved to Columbus when they were very young.
Okay. So my mom, same kind of scenario. My mom grew up in Alabama for the most part, and then moved north. And she was a teenager actually when she met Billy. Oh, wow. And when she started wrestling, she was a teenager, to be quite honest. And when she met him at there was this supper club that was here, and my mom would I think it was called the Miramore. I don't know what it was called, but it was a supper club. My mom was a Coke girl at the supper club, and Billy would come in all the time. And my mom would always be dressed really sharp and put together very well and very professional. And he would say to her when he'd come in there, I'm gonna steal you away, or something like that. And then one time he came in there and he said, I think I want you to come and wrestle with me or something. And he was like, what? She was like, I could wrestle. So long story short, he introduces her to Babs, and Ethel trained my mom to become a wrestler. Marva was brought in, and the four of those ladies were a team, basically. And when you mentioned about the travel piece, it brings me back to stories where my mom would tell me about when they would have to travel south, even though, you know, she knew the South, so she knew what to expect. But we're talking 50s and 60s when segregation was in full swing.
Oh, yeah.
And they would be on the road. And here you have Billy, who's, Chris, can you do me a favor? Can you send me that picture of Billy at the table? Don't say who that famous person is. If you send that, I want to show it to them right now.
Yeah, should I send it now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll send it now.
If you send it now, then that way I can show them just the type of people that these folks were around, the level of success, if you will, that they actually had at that time, popularity, if you will. So anyway, she would talk about when they would drive south. Here's Billy, this white man, with these these four black women. So depending upon where they were and what time of the day it was, they may have to switch seats in the car. Like it may have been Billy's car and he may have been driving, but a white man can't be driving around four black women.
Well, it was actually Billy Wolf and Mildred Burke's son, Billy Jr., who would drive them. Okay. So it's even worse because if you had an older white man, the police might kind of defer to him because he's an older white man, but this young white man with these young black women, because Ethel and Babs were also in their teens. Well, Ethel, she says she started with Billy Wolf and she was actually in middle school. So these were not seasoned, later on in their career. They stayed in wrestling, where they grew up and became seasoned athletes. But when they first started, they were like basically children, like your mom.
My mom was at least 15, 16 years old, wrestling, working in a supper club. See, now, mind you, this is a whole nother day and time. Yes. So she probably, I don't know if she was truthful about her age to get that job, But at the end of the day, she was living a full life, grown woman life,
Living her best
wrestling,
life.
traveling the world.
Yeah.
At 15, 16, 17 years old. So I
Right.
can only imagine.
Right. I just emailed the photo. Did you get it?
Yes. And I'm actually forwarding it to my computer. So go ahead and tell. So what is the, tell us a little bit more about the sisters and where their careers sort of led them.
Yeah. So this all leads into the special that A&E is going to have tomorrow night about Ethel. And it's actually just a short little blurb, sort of a short video retrospective about the three sisters and how they were pioneers, Black women pioneers in the wrestling industry. But so Ethel actually became the first world champion, and Babs was actually, of course, the one who recruited her two sisters into the business. So, as I said, they went all around the world. They were known. In Ethel talks about going to Cuba before the embargo, and she said, even though they had to deal with racism in the United States, she talked about how she could see the color line in Cuba, where the light-skinned Cubans, they were like the professionals, the doctors and lawyers, and the Afro-Cubans were like working in the hotels as maids and janitors. So they really saw all different kinds of life. Before it was even common for Black people to really travel internationally, they were going all over the world. So I mean, they were trailblazers in so many ways. They broke down so many barriers.
You said a lot about how they broke so many barriers. They were considered too at that time, like, they were treated much like entertainers.
Right.
And they traveled often with entertainers. My mom used to talk about all the time. It always takes me back to the Temptations movie. It makes me think of the Temptations movie when they're all on the bus.
Yeah.
And they're, it's like all the groups are on the bus together and they're traveling and touring together. And my mom used to talk about how they would share buses with the Globetrotters.
Yes.
So Globetrotters and them became very good friends. Other wrestlers, obviously, they would sometimes tour with, even the male wrestlers, I think, from time to time.
Yeah. I actually interviewed
Brazil.
Bobo Brazil, who actually married Kathleen Wembley, another one of the first original Black female wrestlers.
Oh, wow.
I actually interviewed Rowdy Roddy Piper for the documentary, before he passed away in 2015. But he came in early enough where he knew some of the women who stayed in the business longer, like he knew Ramona Isabel, because they would go up. He's Canadian, so they would go up to Montreal and wrestle a lot. And he just Rowdy Roddy Piper talked about how promoters often didn't give these women their due. He would say they had to work harder than we did because they weren't taking it seriously. And a lot of times promoters would not put them on as the main attraction because they didn't think that male wrestling fans would pay to see women as the main attraction. But a lot of times these Black women were on the same bill as white men. Yep. So you would see, if you go back and look at some of the old press clippings, like University of Notre Dame is where I did a lot of the research. They have all these press clippings where it's like, women like your mom and Ethel on the same bill as like, some of the big major white stars of the day, white men. So they were doing things that were taboo in a lot of ways.
Yeah. My mom would talk about how sometimes, when they go to certain places, they would have to come through the kitchen.
Yeah.
There were always instances where they would often be at places with Sam Cooke and those folks, because even though those big, rich, famous Black stars, they still couldn't stay in white hotels either. And so they'd all be staying in the same place. So that chitlin circuit was real, and they all really got to know each other well because it's a small industry, entertainment in general.
Yeah, and it wasn't just that it was inconvenient, like, oh, I can't go in the front door of a restaurant. At times it was really life-threatening. Like Ethel tells a story in the documentary about how there was a group called the White Citizens Council, was basically like a polite name for the Ku Klux Klan. When she was wrestling in, it was either Tuscaloosa, Alabama, or Missouri. And this group threatened to hang Ethel and this other Black female wrestler. They were like, this group told the promoter, if you let those Black girls come on, we will hang them. So Ethel and this other Black female wrestler had to forfeit their purse. They didn't make their money. They had to hop in the car, drive all the way back to Columbus. because it was, and she said they were wrestling in the time when the civil rights movement was just getting off the ground. So she said there were times when Dr. King would come in and do rallies, and they were like, you know, we're going to have to cancel the match because the promoters would get all nervous, like, oh, you know, there's these agitators coming in to make trouble, you know, referring to civil rights activists as agitators. And they just had to give up their money and leave. They had spent all, you know, hours and hours on the road and would just have to turn right back around and come home.
Wow. Here, I got the picture. So I want to show everyone the picture. And Chris, you tell everybody who's in the picture, but tell the famous person last, okay?
Yes.
Actually, before you tell them, I'm gonna ask them if they know. You guys, here's a picture. Look at the person on the far left,
right,
in the polka dot dress, and you think about who you think that might be. But Chris is gonna tell us who all these people are. Go ahead.
Yeah. So obviously you have Billy Wolf, you have Babs Wingo sitting right next to him, not the super famous person. Then your mom, Lula Mae, and this was at one of the historically Black nightclubs on Long Street, which is, you know, the where the Black community was thriving back in the 50s and 60s. That was the area where all the African Americans lived back in the day. So I'm sure this woman did not change as she aged. This other woman in the photo, she looked the same when she was in her 60s and 70s as she looked in this photo.
Yes. It is Nancy Wilson, y'all.
Yes.
Also an Ohioan. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much for Cleveland. And used to spend her summers and stuff here in Columbus because her grandparents lived right behind my daddy. So they used to, my dad always says that was his first girlfriend, but I don't know. I don't know if it's true. But yeah, those are those ladies and Billy Wolf. All right. So now what ended up happening with like these ladies years down the road? Like I know my mom had to stop wrestling early. She had cut her hand really badly and never felt comfortable enough to return to the sport. That's when Ramona, I believe, came in and became the fourth girl with the sisters. My mom went on to work in corrections. Surprisingly, she went and did that work. What did the other ladies go on to do?
Yeah, so actually, Marva ended up doing something similar. She ended up working at TICO, which was the old juvenile detention center here in Columbus. And Marva ended up leaving the business after she had this really, and her daughter Kim talks about it in the documentary Lady Wrestler, where Marva had this experience in Japan. She was wrestling in Tokyo, where the promoter had told her that she needed to throw the fight to let the opponent win, and Marva refused. And they said if she didn't do this, they were going to throw her out of a skyscraper window. So she ended up having a nervous breakdown, ended up in a sanitarium in Japan for months until finally they were able to bring her back home. And after that, she just was not. I mean, think of it. She was just like, so she was like, I'm done with wrestling. So she ended up getting a job at TICO as a youth counselor, but she would still go, and every now and then Billy Wolf or another promoter would call her to come wrestle on the weekends. So she kept doing it part-time, but it just was, I mean, as you can imagine, it was not the same after that. Babs, I actually have less information on. I don't know when she ended up leaving the business, but Ethel actually wrestled from the early 50s until the late 70s. But Ethel had been a wife and a mother all throughout her most of her wrestling career as an adult. She was a wife and mother. So she eventually just decided that she would rather focus on her family and just left wrestling to basically become like a mom, you know, and focus on her children.
Now, she was married. Ramona Isabel, the person we keep mentioning Ramona for a few reasons. One, because she was obviously a big part of all of this, did it for a long time. She also, as I just mentioned, she replaced, when my mom left, she replaced her spot. But my mom and she had always been friends. Yes. And they even later in life, did she ever work in corrections too? Because I know, who did you said Marva did. And I know my mom and Marva were working in the same area around the same time. And so what did Ethel?
I know Ramona actually, I don't know if she ended up working in corrections, but she ended up working for the state of Ohio for the Bureau of Workers' Compensation. That's where she was working.
Okay, maybe that's it. Okay.
That's where she was working when I started working on the documentary. She was about to retire from the Bureau of Workers' Compensation. So it's possible she did work in she didn't mention that to me, but it's possible she did work in corrections before she went to the Bureau of Workers' Compensation.
All those ladies that you mentioned, honestly, I never had a chance to meet any of the sisters. I know Ramona. I call her Aunt Ramona. And if you're watching, hi, Aunt Ramona.
Yes, hi, Aunt Ramona.
So I know Aunt Ramona. But what I remember specifically about Aunt Ramona, when I was a little girl, she was acting as well. She was an actress. So she would, and that's the thing my mom taught me about wrestling. That, you know, there's some acting that goes into it, right? It's all about entertainment value, if you will. So she used to tell me that. Now, mind you, I was a wrestling fan as a kid. My mom hated it. She actually hated wrestling. Hated it. Didn't want to see it on TV. Didn't want to, She would just shake her head. My dad and I loved it as a kid. Tony Atlas and Andre the Giant and Randy Savage and the people you mentioned earlier. Like all those names, I just remember them like it was yesterday. And my cousins and my dad and I, we would all go see these folks when they come to town. My mom hated it. She absolutely hated it. Now, you said something earlier, too, that Babs didn't like to talk about her days in wrestling. My mom was the same way. Were the other ladies like that?
Yeah, and that's something that I found. I think it's because the Black community has this respectability politics thing. And especially back in the 50s and 60s, roles for women were a lot more clearly defined. You were supposed to be, quote unquote, ladylike. And wrestling obviously was not looked at as something that was ladylike. So Ethel didn't even tell her children she was a wrestler. They found out she was a wrestler by seeing her on TV wrestling. So because she felt like they would be worried about her getting hurt and stuff. So that is a common thread among all the Black women wrestlers. A lot of the white women, like especially Fabulous Moolah, they went on to work with the WWE and like, you know, get inducted into halls of fame. The Black women were a lot more shy of the spotlight. And so I was really, really fortunate that the women I was able to interview for the documentary, like, you know, your Aunt Ramona and Ethel, were willing to speak with me because they were very, very like once they retired, especially, it was like that chapter of my life is closed and I'm not going to talk about it anymore. So a lot of the Black women just felt like it was something that was like looked down upon. And one of the wrestlers I interviewed was this white woman named Ethel Brown, who actually befriended Babs and Ethel when they first got in the business. And Ethel Brown said that, yes, there was always that show business element to wrestling, but Billy Wolf was adamant that you really had to know the holds and you really had to be an athlete. You couldn't just be somebody who got up there and faked, you know, the moves. You had to really know them. And these women had to be like acrobats. I mean, they would do all these backflips and, you know, flipping over the ropes and, you know, they had to really know how to fall and how to do the hold. So you could break your neck if you didn't know what you were doing, you know, and you end up, you know, trying to do a backflip, you could land on your neck and hurt yourself. So they were athletes. They had that show business element to it. And some of their matches were choreographed and some of the winners were predetermined. But it was like they were still athletes, unlike
for sure.
Yeah, unlike today where it's more show than it is sports.
But still knowing how to land and how to take a hit and all of that stuff, it takes practice and skill and hard work. And those ladies worked really hard. Heck, you could see their bodies and know that they were working hard. And then at a time like that, when they were taking care of kids, they had to do everything.
Yes.
You know, when they were home, they were cooking and cleaning and keeping the kids. And if they had men and whatever they were doing, you know, so they were holding down the household and bringing home the bacon and traveling the world and fighting civil rights. It was just a lot.
Yeah.
You know?
And you know, something about your Aunt Ramona is that you said she was acting. I actually didn't know that about her, but it doesn't surprise me because if you look at her publicity shots, she looks
beautiful.
She looks like a Hollywood starlet. And that's the thing about Billy Wolf is he wanted his women wrestlers to look like starlets when they were outside of the ring. So Ramona's photos, she looks like, you know, Diane Carroll or Diana Ross or one of those really, or Dorothy Dandridge, one of those really glamorous Black women from back in the day. So it doesn't surprise me that she was acting as well.
Yeah, my mom used to talk about how their whole, like you just said, their whole thing was to look like models, but whoop
Yes.
ass in the ring. Okay?
Yeah.
Y'all look pretty and dainty and be ladylike. They had a lot of class. Don't get it
Yeah.
twisted. These are classy women. These
Yeah.
weren't ratchet ladies. These
Yeah.
are very classy women holding down real families and then going out there and doing the thing. So, all right. So, well, tell me this. Tomorrow night on A&E, you guys, it's not the documentary. Now, first, let's go back. How can they get the documentary, Chris?
So, yeah. So Lady Wrestler, the full-length documentary, is available on Amazon.Prime. You can rent it or you can buy it. So the A&E thing, let me explain how that happened. So A&E sort of heard, the producers at A&E sort of heard through the grapevine about the Black women wrestlers. And they had actually seen an interview I had done with Shelly, Ethel's daughter, and Kim Martin, Marva's daughter, when Ethel was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame posthumously last spring. And there was a whole controversy because the WWE didn't contact the families and they used the wrong photo. They used Babs's photo instead of Ethel in their video announcing the nomination or the induction. They used footage of Sandy Parker, a Black wrestler from Canada, instead of Ethel. So the family was really upset about that. So we did an interview on my YouTube channel. So A&E actually came across the interview because it sort of went viral.
What?
Because a lot of people in the wrestling community were sharing it and stuff.
Yeah.
And it generated a lot of buzz. So one of the producers at A&E contacted me and said, "Hey, we would like to do some sort of tribute to Ethel. We have this series of short biographies. We did one on Mildred Burke previously. We would like to do one on Ethel, but we want to work with the family to avoid, the catastrophe that happened with the WWE." So I was able to connect them with the family. And so what they did was they just took, they did their own, A&E did their own research, and they did this short bio of Ethel. It's called What You Need to Know. It's called Biography You Should Know, Ethel Johnson. So it's a short segment that's going to air during the 8 p.m. hour. It's not the entire hour, but it's going to air at some point during the hour. And it tells the story of how Ethel and her two sisters were pioneering Black women in the wrestling industry. And I will just say there's a little photo of your mom in the, I got a chance to see it. So there's a little photo of your mom in the A&E segment.
I'm excited. I'm excited to watch it.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Yeah.
I'm going to ask the chat. You guys, do you have any questions? Do you have any questions for Chris tonight? So what's next?
You know what I hope is next?
What?
I'm hoping that the national attention that A&E will hopefully bring to at least the three sisters is that something I did was I nominated them, and I also nominated Ramona for the Ohio Women's Hall of Fame, for the Columbus Citizens Hall of Fame. I don't know if it was because of COVID or whatever. I never heard anything back. It's great that they're getting this national recognition, but I want them to have local recognition in the form of something physical that future generations can go to. I want a monument, like we have a monument of Arnold Schwarzenegger in front of the convention center, either a monument. I want them added to the Long Street Cultural Wall, this wall that we have that depicts famous Black people like Nancy Wilson, like Amos Lynch, my old boss from the Collin Post. I want a street named after them. I want some kind of plaque installed at the high school that they went to. I want some kind of formal recognition from the city of Columbus and the state of Ohio, recognizing women like your mom and like the three sisters who they were, it's not overstating it to say they were international ambassadors for Columbus.
For sure.
They went all over the world representing Columbus with class, as you said. They were always well-dressed, very ladylike. They deserve recognition, and they haven't gotten it yet. It's great that I did this documentary, but that's not enough. They need their hometown and their home state to formally recognize them. That's going to take consistent effort. I actually just showed Lady Wrestler at the inaugural Black Wrestle Fest in Brooklyn, New York. And everybody there at the screening was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe there's not a street in Columbus named after these women. If this was Brooklyn, they would have, a statue of them or something. So that's what I really hope comes next. And that's going to take lobbying, city council, lobbying, the state legislator, and even like Joyce Beatty, our congresswoman in DC, some kind of formal recognition.
Yeah. Tweety asks, when was your documentary completed and how long did it take from beginning to end?
So it was definitely an odyssey. I started it in 2006 and finished it in 2018. It debuted at the Wexner Center for the Arts. It subsequently has been shown.
There.
Yes, you were there. It was so great to have you there. It was so great to have you there.
No.
Yeah, and it's shown at a couple of small film festivals, Film Festival of Columbus. It showed at the Museum of the Moving Image in New York. As I mentioned, it just showed again in New York at the Black Wrestle Fest in Brooklyn. I've had interest from all over the world. Actually, a librarian from the University of Istanbul in Turkey, emailed me and was like, I heard through the grapevine about this documentary about Black women trailblazers. Will you please make a DVD and send it to me so we can have it for our library here in Istanbul? I've had people in London contact me, London, England, not London, Ohio, London, England, contact me and say, hey, we want to recognize these. So I went to the Cannes Film Festival. I didn't show the documentary there, but once again, networking. I went there to network. I was in line at a screening behind Viola Davis's husband. And I know that because he turned around and said, hi, I'm Viola Davis. Yeah. And we just made conversation. He said, what brings you here? And I told him about Lady Wrestler. He said, that is amazing. So here we have the husband of an Oscar-winning international superstar who sees the value in their story. Arnold Schwarzenegger saw the value in their story and wanted to give Ethel a Lifetime Achievement Award. So this goes way beyond little cowtown Columbus. This is an international story.
Let's make a movie, Chris.
And that's so funny you say that. Everyone I tell this story to, they're like, I could see that being a limited series on Netflix. I could see that being even a theatrical movie. So it needs to be turned into a movie.
And I've been on my wheels been turning about ideas around a movie, around just my mom's story. But honestly, I think this story is so much bigger, and these sisters are phenomenal, and in so many ways to me, because they didn't have to take my mom under their wing like that, and here's this extra woman they've thrown in, cutting into the check. But I guess they probably did need a fourth person, but they didn't have to be good people. They didn't have to be nice people. Right. And they really did take her under their wing. And my mom always gave credit to Babs for just being the true trailblazer, the whole thing. And Chris, let me say this. Chris and I have we have several mutual friends, but years ago, before I met Chris, there was a mutual friend, God rest his soul. He's passed on now, but he knew about my mom.
Wow.
And he came to me one day because he knew you.
Okay.
Eric Carmichael.
Yes.
And Eric said, hey, Val, I know this reporter is at the Dispatch and he's doing this story. And I think that your mom, he wants to talk to your mom. And I was like, well, my mom does not want to talk to anybody about wrestling. Okay. You have to find her in the right spot, right day, right mood. And then she might share something, but an interview, no. And long story short, I said, I'll try. And I talked to her multiple times. I think you and I actually spoke once in the midst of that, because you were going to interview her or whatever. And she just said, no, he needs to talk to Babs. He needs to talk to Babs. So it's funny that none of them really like to boast about those times.
Yeah.
It was always more of an educational talk when my mom talked about it. Like, be careful because these things could happen. Or I knew this, she'd give me insight on people she met and knew and that kind of thing, and teaching me how to be more responsible or what have you. But she really didn't glorify the work that they did. And they were all very quiet when they would come home about, if someone were to ask them what they did for a living, I don't know what they were saying, because they would never say that they were wrestlers. That's just something they wouldn't tell.
Yeah, I actually did an interview during Black History Month with a local Black genealogy society, and one of the ladies goes to church with your Aunt Ramona and was like, "She's so quiet and lady. I never would have guessed she was a wrestler." So
Funny. I know. It's funny. Oh my gosh. Well, anyway, Chris, thank you so much for being here. I
thank
enjoyed you so
Valerie.
much.
Thank you.
Tomorrow, everybody, check out A&E. Don't tell me, Chris. I wrote it down. A&E biography. You should know Ethel Johnson.
Yes.
8 p.m. Eastern?
8 p.m. Eastern. Yes.
All right. Please, everybody, be there or be square. All right. Chris, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Valerie. Thank you so much. This was my pleasure.
And I think I want to have you back. Let me ask you now. I'm going to ask you in front of 46 people. Okay.
Yeah.
I do a panel discussion like once a month, and I have 2 comedians that are always on my panel. Would you like to come on and we can have a discussion about comedy and comedy of today and all jokes aside? And
I would love that. That would be a blast. I would love it.
All right. So I'll be in touch with you about a date then. How about that?
Sounds good. I'll look forward to it.
Thanks, Chris. You have a great one, okay?
You too. Thanks, Valerie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, y'all. Did you like it? I'm seeing all these great comments in the chat. Thank you all for supporting. Let's see. What are you guys saying in here? Oh, thank you, Miss Really. You said, thank you for this. I hope this will be posted. It'll definitely be posted. Okay, I'm not taking it down at all. So you can definitely red ball it as soon as we're done. I've been working and listening. Wrestling was it M-Town boy? I used to love going to when they would come in town to like the like the convention center nearby and have these big matches. It was just a big show that was a lot of fun. Used to have so much fun with that. Let's see who else is in here. Thank you, Jill's Comfort Zone. Thank you. Is Jessica still in here? Jessica, if you're still in here, I saw the comment about my lipstick girl. Thank you, girl. Oh, what's in here? Oh God. Thank you. Hey, friend in real life. Thank you for being here, honey. Let's see who else is in here that I didn't get a chance to say hi to. All right, that's it. Okay. What you say, Tweety? I was there. It's very interesting how they do the shooting and filming, make the place look so big. And it's not, oh, I know. Yeah, when you're in different spaces and shooting films is very true. Very true. Oh, thank you, Adore Me. Thank you. Were you guys surprised? I think I told some people that my mom used to be a wrestler. Did I tell y'all that? I think a few of you might have heard me say that, but yeah. So anywho, all right, guys. Well, I'm going to get out of here. I might come back though, because I think, maybe we come back and do an open panel and just have a good little chit chat. Okay, I thought so, Sarkonos. I thought so. Well, it might have only been 6 of y'all in here that heard it, so it's no big deal. Would you say, Jill, you were surprised? You were surprised? Yeah, so tell the people in the streets, don't be messing with me, honey. Don't be messing with me. I've been trained by the best. All right, y'all. So I knew, well, of course you knew, Shirley. All right, guys. Oh, you're having a party at 9? Okay, good. So I'm going to fix me a plate, get comfortable, coupon, and then I'm just coming over there and hanging out with you. All right? Thank you, everybody. You all have a great evening. And if I don't see you over at Coupon Therapies tonight at 9 p.m., you have a good night. And I promise I'll see you tomorrow. Okay? Bye.